Check one, two, check one, two, check one, two. We are live here with special guest Paul. How you doing today? How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you so much for having me. I'm blessed to be here. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule because I know you got a lot going on there. And again, thanks very much. It's a treat, and I look forward to this podcast or interview, as I want to call it. I really don't like saying podcast, even though this is a podcast in today's terms. But I like to look at this as a maybe a mentor thing or an interview. That's how I like to look at it. Because a lot of people have podcasts nowadays, but I like to look at this as just information and a mentor thing. But again, thank you for your time, your busy schedule to do this. But let's get into it here. Who is Paul? Who is Paul?
That's a great question. I'm still trying to figure it out myself, right? Um, no, man. I'm just kind of run it down as quickly and as succinctly as I can. I was born out in California, born out in Los Angeles. Real blessed to be out here. But when I was younger, we moved over out to West Texas, at a place called El Paso, over in
Mm,
far West Texas. Grew up there for the majority of my life. You know what I mean. So been a little bit around all over the Southwest. And then I was thankful enough just to, by the grace of a young single mother, myself and my older brother, raised out over there. Been around music, thankfully, and just took a liking to kind of nerdy type of things. I've always been a computer geek ever since I came across those as a kid, and eventually was able to do some research and come across the term of audio engineer, which I had never really heard before while I was kind of trying to figure out what to do post high school and doing some lazy college work, and was able to come across the term and found out about that. Was very intriguing, and was able to take a risk and go out to an audio school in Arizona called the Conservatory of Recording Arts and Sciences, and that's kind of where in my mind, I guess my life kind of starts. Everything before that's a little bit of a blur, but there I was able to get a good foundation on audio and what it's like to work in that kind of realm. And thankfully enough, got an internship that was able to bring me back out to Los Angeles, which I had always wanted to do. As a kid when we would visit, I love it out here, and yeah, was just very blessed to be able to get an internship out of school. Started off in post production audio at a place called Mikasa Multimedia way back when, and just over the course of trying to figure things out and make it, I guess, as you would say. Um, Built a family, did some work over there, and transitioned into working in over at Interscope Studios to a good friend of mine who was also a student at the conservatory. From there, just cut my teeth being an assistant engineer, just kind of diving into whatever I could to make myself as useful and as valuable as possible. And that's led me to my current position over here as the head of operations with the team, a small team of people for Dr. Dre's Aftermath Entertainment, which I'm very fortunate to be a part of. And yeah, just making sure that the studios are taken care of day by day, making sure the ship is running smoothly so that we can get whatever work we need to be doing done. And yeah, that's kind of the professional part of it, I guess. Other than that, I'm a big movie guy. I love music. I've been ever since I was a kid. We always had movies and music and entertainment kind of stuff in my home, and that's imprinted on me a lot of the things I'm into now, and a lot of the cool stuff that I'm able to be a part of and observe. And um, yeah, it's been a long journey, but I'm still working on it every day, and just trying to get better and trying to be helpful. So I appreciate any audience like this, and being able to just chop up that information and give it back. I'm happy to do. I've been really fortunate on my journey. People have helped me when I didn't even know if I could take that information and do anything with it. So I'm always happy to return the favor and offer whatever insight I can. So yeah, I guess that's just a fraction of it. There's a whole lot more.
and
We
much
could be
more to
there all
come.
day.
Much more success to come because Paul, man, you're doing it and stuff behind the scenes that you've talked about, with us and all that. But I mean, much more to come. But let's go back to Texas because I'm a Texan. Let's go back to there. You said you grew up in El Paso.
Let's do it,
How
y'all.
influential? Because we know Texas is the best state in this country. We already know. We know without Texas, there's no America. By the way, let's go on and just say that there. Um, but how was growing up in El Paso, and how that influenced you as a man, and as to become a mogul? And I would say a mogul. I would say even now. How did that influence you to be who you are today?
Wow. That's a really good question. And I would say that the thing that I really do appreciate about growing up out there in West Texas is just is kind of different pace of life, right? LA and a lot of the larger metropolitan places that I understand, I've only been to a few, but they can move really, really fast. And you have a lot of people doing a lot of things. They're either in their own lane or they're doing things in a kind of a bubble. Everybody's trying to make it. Everybody's trying to be successful, trying to be something, make something of whatever they're doing. And I love that about Los Angeles now. But I will say, growing up in Texas did give me a lot of teach me a lot of patience. There's a certain type of speed that things go, and where I was at is a great place to raise a family. It's a very it's a wonderful city. It's right there on the border between Texas and Mexico, so you get a lot of a lot of variety of culture there. But yeah, that just kind of set the tone for, I would say, kind of the personality that I have now. I was raised by a single mother, myself and my older brother, and I think a lot of that had to do with where we were at in Texas. I think we had a lot more resources, and she had a lot more time to help kind of cultivate who we were supposed to be and the men we were supposed to become. Because sometimes in a place like LA, you got to pay the rent, you got to pay the bills. Things aren't as cheap, and sometimes, and I can speak as a parent because I'm doing that now. Sometimes you work so much that you can sacrifice time with other things, and then that can go a couple of different ways, right? So I thank God for my mother, who was able to really focus in on being able to sustain herself as an independent young mom, and taking care of two troublemakers for kids, right? So I think it informed a lot of who I try to be and who I try to position myself as, just in being just trying to be a good person. You know what I mean? Like it imprinted on me a lot of character traits that you don't see a lot. Again, when things are moving so fast, sometimes it's hard to connect with people because they're doing things. It's understandable, but over there, when the speed is a little bit slower, you can have conversations with people. Um, you can get in depth with people. I met my wife. Very fortunate to meet her out there, and her demeanor is very different than it might have been had it been somebody from Los Angeles. That's faster paced. So um, yeah, I think it just informed the way that I move and the way that I try to approach things, to not be so kind of so overly concerned with how quick things need to move, and really just take the process and spread it out, and piece things together. So I think it's helped a lot with that, at least in my personal case.
Got it. Were you into the music scene in Texas at the time? SUC, Big Pokey. Were you into that scene?
Oh man, you know what? I want to say I wish I was, but right around that time, again, in my earlier, high school years, and even a little bit after that, and taking some junior college courses, I was so kind of all over the place that, as far as music was concerned, I had the benefit of again, my West Coast roots, being very familiar with people like DJ Quick. At the time, was my one of my favorite producers, Exhibit, everything that was coming out of there. But there was also, UGK was one of my favorite groups from out of there, as far as like the South is concerned, and 8 Ball and MJG and Rap a Lot Records and all those kinds of things. And honestly, a lot of my influence comes from my older brother, who is 6 years older than I am. And right in those formative years, like 13, 14, 15, right when you're going into high school, I think that's when I really started gravitating to music. And and how it affected me, so I was a huge Tupac fan. I loved everything that No Limit Records was doing, and all those influences came from my older brother though, because even though I had a strong single mother for guidance, she was very religious and very strict. So there was only so much music, or only certain kinds of music that we could even have at home. So a lot of stuff that he got into and he was able to kind of sneak and have that he shouldn't have, I was able to listen to just by proxy. So, but after that, getting more involved and just being more aware of what comes out of Texas and the South. Number one, like those influences, you see them now. It's everywhere, and it's changed a lot of the hip hop from before, where it was usually West Coast, a lot of West Coast, East Coast. There was definitely stuff happening in Central Texas, but then you have Atlanta that's been running things for a very very long time, and you have now with the internet we get to see a lot more of things placed all over. But yeah, to be from Texas and to hear about things that some people still are getting used to. Some people still don't know what chopped and screwed is, unfortunately. But hey, um, yeah, all those influences as far as music are concerned, um, were inundated there. And maybe at the time, because I was teetering between figuring out what the hell I was going to do with my life, they were all there in the background. It was all part of the soundtrack to the development of my character. So I do my best to go back and revisit a lot of that stuff when I can, just for the memories attached to it.
Yeah, because you know, I'm a huge Southern hip hop fan, but West Coast hip hop, it wins for me because I look at you had mentioned DJ Quick, and I think about people like DJ Battle Cat, and there's a
Mhm.
long list, Dre and all that. But I just look at the influences and the way West Coast rap combine certain things and then utilize their own style was just, I mean, it was second to none. But would it be safe to say you're more of a West Coast hip hop fan than Southern, or about the same? Or it really don't matter to you?
Man, you know what? Honestly, I would say because I moved out to Texas when I was younger, and then as you get older, you understand, like, okay, I was born in Los Angeles, like that's where I remember home being until I was a kid, and then having to go back and visit and visiting family. Like where I was at in El Paso, it took some time for even those things from Houston and in Dallas, even those musical influences to reach somewhere like El Paso, because again, things just kind of slowly traveled at the time, right? There was no
Right,
internet then. So
right,
um, when A Ball and MJG or something dropped the album, it took a while before it would be on anybody's radar. My brother was really good about that. Like he did have an ear to music, which I appreciate, and it was just a slower process to get to where I was at. But every time that I would come and visit LA and just hear Power 106 and drive around and just hear what
mm,
was on the radio, it's like these are things that I'm not even thinking about. You hear about like NWAs, and there's Public Enemy on the East Coast, and there's so much in between, and there's like your classic records, your Grandmaster Flashes and Run DMC and all the things that travel further than where they come from. But then finding out like E40 was one of those things where
mm,
I had never been in Northern California as a kid. So E40 and Mac Dre and that style of music, um I kind of was fortunate enough to get it from all over. But I would have to say, when I think about it and I go back and I listen to stuff, a lot of it is more West Coast influence.
mm,
And honestly, I think that's just mostly because of either at the time what I was thinking of looking into or what I was researching versus not knowing about it. You know what I mean? So I'm always open to listen to anything from everywhere. Um, if there's anything from the South that I haven't been made aware of, like I'm always open to listen to any and everything, just for the just the appreciation of what it is, old or new. You know what I mean? Like, um, yeah, I'm open for all of it. But if I had to say I had to lean for one particular thing, it would probably be heavily be more West Coast influence. Exhibit is one of my favorite artists. Um, I go back to his stuff a lot, and just Dog Pound, like
mm.
stuff like
Classic.
that I just remember in my formative years as a teenager was just like, I love this stuff. And then there was the whole Pac phase where you listen to everything, and All Eyes on Me was one of my favorite albums of all time. And then you dive into further down the rabbit hole with Dre and Daz and Corrupt and all that, just that section of West Coast music that I remember being the foundation for a lot of the stuff that I built on, and then of course everything that a lot of the stuff that comes out now. That has a I'm a feeling guy when it comes to music, and again, I'm a little bit older, so it takes me a little bit of time to get into some stuff that I'm not used to,
Right.
but I always try to find an appreciation for it and a place for it because again, it just music to me just is a timestamp for moments in life. You know what
Mhm.
I'm saying? And um, yeah, it just depends on what mood you're in and what you're going through. There's usually a song for it, and that's how I track my life, so I can build, back from childhood memories of things that if you ask me, for specifics of what it was, I probably couldn't tell you. But if you mention a song, I might be able to recall it a lot better, which I think is funny. But um, so maybe a little bit more West Coast than most, but I'm up for some South stuff. If there's something I ain't heard of yet, let me know. Please put me on.
Definitely, definitely. Um, so right now, I'm trying to lose weight, but I got to ask this question too. Who's got the better food, Texas or California? Because and also on on the tie in of that, do you prefer beef ribs or pork ribs?
That's a good question, and I'm gonna be hungry for the rest of the interview, so I appreciate it.
Right.
No, man, I love food, so I'll eat anything. But I will say, um, a lot of the food in Texas that I got was amazing. There's nothing like Texas barbecue. I'll say that much.
Mhm.
Right. I haven't had like further southeast type of style of barbecue in
Carolina
that.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly right. But I will say LA and the West Coast, there's a lot of variety in food because there's so many different cultures that are around. So you can try damn near everything, right? You could try the entire world of food if you wanted to in LA. But where I was at in Texas, the way they do Tex-Mex food
Mhm.
and Mexican food, um, and even some of the southern food. Because where I was in El Paso, it's a big military town, so you would have, there's a couple soul food spots. They're not a whole lot, but the few that are there, like the pockets that are there, are really good. And it's a one off. It's a mom and pop place that you're not going to find anywhere else. But
Mhm.
um, I would have to give it to Texas just because I was there for so long. Um, and yeah, it's funny. Like we had some friends here. I hate to tell the story, but they didn't understand. So in El Paso, we call it chili con queso.
Mhm.
Out here, they call it nachos.
Right.
And I didn't know that there was one name here and one name there. It's like it's a big difference in like the naming and what people put in their food and all that stuff. And yeah, Texas has, I think they got the upper hand on that one, just for the specificity of how many things that Texas does really well and the flavor of everything. And LA's just got them on the amount of restaurants in one location. Probably that's about it.
Right.
To simple
Right.
stuff.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And pork ribs, I'd probably have to say to answer the initial question.
Woo, pork. Okay, I prefer beef. I don't eat pork anymore. I just, there's a documentary I saw
Yeah,
like 10 years ago, and they was talking about pork and how, it's this and it's the dirtiest animal and all this kind of stuff and how they process it. But at the end of the day, with this food, who knows where it comes from.
who
Um,
knows?
but yeah, I mean, I gotta admit, pork ribs were good, but overall, I have to go with beef ribs because they just better tasting. But pork ribs, they definitely got their they got their um they got their room in food ranking, if you will. But yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah. So let's talk about your time at Interscope and how did you? That was pretty much your. Well, I don't want to say your first internship, but you intern there, and then it kind of opened more doors to get into Interscope, or yeah.
Great question. Great question. My only internship that I've been blessed to have to do was the very first studio that I worked at Mikasa Multimedia, which is in post production. So that was my only internship coming out of the conservatory. Interscope, actually, interestingly enough, there was two opportunities that came around. I had a good friend of mine. His name is Chris Cheney. He's an amazing dude, an amazing engineer. One of my closest friends. We were in the same class at the conservatory, same date, same class, same everything. We came out at the same time, but he went to Northern California, worked at the plant studios out there,
Okay.
um, got some gold records, but eventually they shut down around the recession when that all happened to the economy. He moved back out to Los Angeles and was able to, bounce around a little bit and ended up over at Interscope Studios in Santa Monica. And while he was there, I was still over at Mikasa. Obviously, the recession had hit, so we were going through a little bit of a tough time ourselves while we were over there. But I was still working, thankfully enough. And interestingly, he had hit me one time, kind of just asked me if I was open to being a runner over at Interscope, and that was the first initial time, and I turned it down because I was doing all right. They had hired me on at Mikasa. This had been a few years after. I had steady work. I had steady hours. I had it was a good position at the time, right? So I turned them down that first time. And then, sure enough, about a year later, the recession got really bad. And the studio that I was at, Mikasa, unfortunately had to slowly, take on less work. And little by little, there was less of a job for me to be had at that place, right? So I was right in that transition period between trying to find some other kind of gig, doing temp work, and of course, kept in contact with Chris. Kind of just hit him up and was, hey man, I know you hit me up a while ago about a runner job. Is that even a possibility? And he said he was going to check into it, gave me a call back, and thankfully enough, he told me to go over to the studios in Santa Monica. This was about 2011. Go over to the studios in Santa Monica because at the time he was doing some light engineering over there, but he was running as well, and he had become one of the supervisors there, right? So someone in the office, kind of doing admin, overseeing the building, and he was trying to get back into engineering. So the idea when we spoke was, maybe I could come in, see if I'm a good fit, and if things work, he could go back and do engineering, and then somebody could fill his spot as a supervisor. And thankfully enough, again, I didn't have to intern. I was able to go over there. I did have to run for a little bit, so I did have to start off, at the entry level, if you will. But after doing that and being as responsible as I could, eventually that transition happened where Chris went off and started doing more engineering, and I was able to have a conversation with the studio manager, and he put me in his spot as the night supervisor. So I started becoming, or I started the I was the night supervisor. I would come in for evening sessions, just keep track of the runners that were there, help out in the room if I could. But I was reporting to the studio manager and just making sure everything was cool. Once sessions were going in the evening, and that's kind of how I made it to Interscope, to a good friend who was kind enough to keep me in mind when I was in a bit of a rut. And yeah, that was the opening to go over to that studio and then start transitioning from doing more audio related specific work, because I still, would assist from time to time and help and do whatever I could. I think I was tutoring somebody in Pro Tools over Craigslist at the time, just to kind of, just to keep hustling a little bit. And that was my entry point to Interscope, thanks to my good friend Chris Cheney. Shout out to him. Yeah.
Yeah, much respect, much respect. And also, when you were at Interscope, you were doing stuff with American Idol and
Yeah.
okay, okay. Can you talk about
Yeah,
that?
absolutely. So a lot of the stuff I was really, really fortunate, man. Again, I'm probably gonna say it over and over again. It's gonna sound redundant, but I was really, really blessed. Yeah, every year they would do the season of American Idol. So they would, for a couple of months, the songs that they would perform on the show, right? They would sing them live and all that. But obviously, all those songs that the contestants would sing, and they would sing for the show, excuse me, they would put them on an album and they would put it on iTunes, right? So that was an album. They got to record that. So that's exactly what would happen. The contestants would come in and they would practice their songs with producers, with vocal coaches, the whole thing. It was like a whole album process. They would get in there for a few weeks. They would go in there. There was the music director, excuse me, who would cut all the music tracks. They would bring in the kids. They would sing their vocals. They would do vocal overdubs. They would get all the performances correct. Somebody would come in, finalize it, mix it, and they would do all this within the course of a couple of weeks before the show aired. I think it was on a Sunday. And as soon as the show aired, like, hey, you can download all these songs on iTunes, whatever, whatever, right? So we would do that once a year. So I was there for a couple of auditions of that. I got to be there very, very fortunately for Good Kid, Mad City when Kendrick was creating that project, which at the time, you hear about I had known Kendrick from Section 80, obviously, which is incredible, and a couple of things that he had done before that. But that was a really, really special moment, just to obviously over time to realize what that time was, and
Right.
being able to hear a couple of the rough things that they were worked on. So Good Kid, Mad City. Lady Gaga had been through a few times. Will I Am, major Interscope artists that of course would be across the road at the corporate offices, so they would come and do sessions. My good buddy Chris Cheney, who was over there, was the main engineer for Chief Keef when they signed him. So Chief Keef and his crew were there for a while. That was an interesting time. Soldier Boy. Um, oh man, there was so many Terrace Martin people like that. Hit Boy,
Mm,
Audio Push, a lot of the just new signees to Interscope, people that were like staples at stuff, came through the studio at that time, as they should. Of course, it's Interscope, right? But that's where I met Dre's camp. Dre would frequent there pretty often, and that was my first initial just ever kind of um uh point of a connection with Dre and his camp. So that was surreal because obviously, I grew up listening to Dre and sneaking around listening to the Chronic, so my mom wouldn't catch me. But that's where I was able to meet his team and meet his head of production and engineers and producers, and thank God, build relationships with them, which has led me to here. But yeah, I'm sure there's a handful of them. I was there for the Beats app creation, Beats Music, excuse me, when they were going through that process. Like, just being able to be a fly on the wall and set up sessions for music video casting that they would do for different artists, and parties that they would have for the execs and artists. And Schoolboy Q did the bulk of one of his albums over there. I think it was Oxymoron. The whole TDE camp was over there. People like 50 Cent would come through. One of my most vivid moments was Dre was working over there and Kobe Bryant stopped by.
mm,
So yeah, just a lot of really cool um just observational kind of viewing of artists that I really, really dug, before and after. And yeah, just a really, really cool experience to be able to learn that, and at the same time just understand the way that a professional setting works. And even though I'm a huge Dre fan, still being aware that it's a workplace. People come here to be creative. They come here to do to do their thing. So there's still a level of professionalism that you have to keep in your interactions with all these people, because we're here to make sure that their time is taken care of and appreciated. It's kind of like a hotel. It's like anybody that comes through the doors. If you're staying with us, if you're here, we want to make sure you have the most comfortable experience to do whatever you do, to create the art that you create. So I was very, very fortunate to learn that firsthand. And yeah, just be a sponge, so to speak. And a lot of the runners and engineers that I came across now are doing amazing things, and they're still good friends to this day, which I'm really, really fortunate for. The relationships that I was able to build and people that I was able to bump into and earn respect from, and yeah, just kind of continue those things going into my current day to day, that type of thing.
I hate to ask this question, but during some of those sessions, whether it be Kendrick or whoever, do you remember any of the processing or chains that was going on, or how they were recording, what equipment was used, and stuff like that?
Sure. 90 95% of everything, as far as vocals were concerned, was a C800. through a 1073 preamp into a tube tech maybe an 1176 for compression. Um, that's pretty much all of the vocal um, processing for most of the stuff that was there. It wasn't rare, but it wasn't very often where you would have somebody come in and they would use anything other than that. We did have some vocalists that would come in. I believe Lady Gaga has her own she has her own mic. It was a Neumann mic, and for some reason I can't think of the name of it right now. But she traveled with her own mic, so she had that. But
Okay.
as far as like vocal recording, yeah, your standard 1073 into some sort of compression, whether it's a tube tech, more often than not, a tube tech CO1B, maybe an 1176, maybe a distressor, depending on what it was. But we did do a lot of rap and hip hop sessions, so that was pretty much most of the footprint as far as that's concerned. And then as far as any mixing that was happening over there, a lot of onboard processing because we had SSLs in there. We had an SSL that was I believe it was a G series console in the bigger room, Studio One, and then there was an older E series console that used to belong to Dre in Studio Two. It was a much smaller room, but it was his old board. So SSL processing and a lot of in the box stuff that was happening. Might have been only one or two mixers that would come and have a small like portable rack of
Okay.
stuff that they would use. I think the one person I can think of, Anthony Kilhofer, I think was his name. He worked with I believe he worked with Kanye and Kid Cudi and a few other like good music artists at the time.
Okay.
He had his own like rolling rack of gear, which was I think it was some compressors and some EQs that he used, but a lot of it was plug-in based, at least the time that I was there. But your typical, your LA2As, we had um what are they, 10 Neve 1081s, I think there are,
Okay.
for some drum recording every once in a while. But the studio had a bunch of 1073s as far as preamps are concerned, which is always helpful. There was a huge mic locker. There was a 251. There was
Mhm.
a
I
vintage
think
251, a lot of vintage Neumann mics that they had. Um, yeah. So as far as doing any bigger, piano sessions or any drum sessions, um, it was there was a little bit of there was enough tools to work with to do some cool stuff. But as far as my time there and dealing with just mostly recording vocals, that's most of what it was, 75% of the time. Yeah, C800, and every once in a while there might be a U87 somebody might use or something, or a U47,
mm,
U47 FET if you're trying to get a particular like vocal mic sound, like a large diaphragm condenser mic we would use. And that would pretty much be it. I don't remember there being anything kind of out of the ordinary that at least in my couple of years there that that was really really rare during that time.
So it sounded like you said sometimes or most of the time there was 2 compressors. Are you using one for like a slow and then one for fast, like the distressor or the 1176, or how did that go about?
Oh, usually, and I apologize. Usually, it was one preamp and then one compressor.
Okay,
It just depended on which one they were using. So
got it.
sometimes, so the staples were usually the C800 going into a 1073. That was pretty much common. But as far as the compressor after that, it would either be a CO1B or an 1176 or a distressor, is what I saw more often than not. I've never really seen dual compression on a vocal chain
Okay.
necessarily. So yeah, usually just a mic, one preamp, and one compressor, going straight to Pro Tools, not even going through the board or anything. Just print it right to Pro Tools is how I usually saw it.
Yeah, because 'cause I've read, and I never heard of C800, well, besides records, but I never,
Mhm.
tracked one or anything like that. But I've heard they don't really, and I hate to say it like this, they don't really require a lot of compression. It's like, a good a good room, a good performer, and that mic's ready to go.
You said that last one is really, really what it comes down to: a good performer, somebody that has good mic technique. will get you what you need. The compressor really is just to, it's just supposed to smooth out the dynamics of what something is. If it's too quiet and then it's too loud, that's going to be jarring, right? So that's what your compression does. It's just kind of a, and that's something that I learned like firsthand. I didn't even know that that was, when we go to the conservatory, they teach you to print a clean signal, but they don't really teach you. They teach you to print through a preamp, but they never really teach you about adding a compressor to that. So that was kind of new for me. But I understood that it's like, oh, okay, you're just trying to get the even signal to noise ratio, the most even, excuse me, signal to noise ratio going into Pro Tools, so that you don't have to do vocal rides. And it's kind of a different way of doing things back. Traditionally they would record it. Your vocalist would rehearse the hell out of that song, so they knew kind of where they were going to do, what their inflection points were, where they were going to get louder, where they were going to get softer. And um a lot of those vocalists that were recording were performers too, so they know how to work a mic when it's going to get too loud. You see a lot of people that know how to take a mic and bring it closer and further away from their mouth. That's mic technique, right? So um, a good performer, obviously, like anything else, a good drummer, a good guitar player, a good performer, bass player, a good performance is always going to be the best possible scenario. You could literally throw the worst possible mic in front of somebody that knows how to perform, and you'll get 95% of the way there. Um, but again, the compression is kind of a safety net, so you don't have too much all over the place, and then you have to do vocal rides or adjustments. Or now in Pro Tools you can clip gain everything, so you can fix stuff, right, if you really wanted to. But if you're working with the bare minimum, concentrate on the performance, try to get the best possible performance out of that person. And that will set the tone for everything else and make your life a lot easier down the line.
And I jokingly say this, but why do you aftermath guys go into the control room and you utilize the, what is it called, the chaotica eyeball? What what is that about?
That is a great question, and I'm glad you asked. And shout out to Chaotic Eyeball. The owner is a good friend of mine. And um, I will say this about the Chaotic Eyeball, right? It is not a one size fit all solution, right? It is a very specific thing. And like any tool, there's a million tools out there. Not all tools work for every single thing. But one way that we use it, because again, our rooms are treated, our rooms are acoustically dead. It's supposed to be high grade so that you can hear everything as flat as possible, right? What we use them for is because Dre likes to record without any separation in the room. So if he's producing somebody, he'll be sitting right at the board, listening to everything, and the artist will be sitting right next to him. There's no separation. There's no vocal booth. Um, there's literally it's hey, I can reach out and talk to you with immediacy, right? Which that's happened. That happens. If you can record next to somebody, that's not out of the ordinary. But where it helps for us is the way that Dre works is he records things and he wants to hear them back immediately on the big speakers, right? And if you're a little bit familiar with audio, you know that having a microphone in front of speakers that are putting out the same signal is very bad. That's a feedback loop, right? You can hurt your ears and blow stuff up, right? So because we have a microphone that's sitting literally right in front of speakers, the chaotic eyeball actually helps minimize a lot of bleed, so that the engineer has maybe a split second to mute the record tracks, and Dre can crank the speakers up, listen back to what he recorded literally seconds ago without causing a feedback loop. So that's why we use it here specifically, right? Um, so it doesn't and again, since golly, I want to say maybe 4 or 5 years now, maybe more. We've had them on the mics inside here. So anything that's come out of here, Anderson Pack, Oxnard, Ventura, um, the GTA stuff that Dre had put out recently, GTA 5, all that's got a chaotic eyeball on it. You know what I mean? So I see a lot of I see a lot of comments out there about hit how it doesn't sound great for what it does. And again, it depends on the application, right? Um, will it work for you in your apartment where there's a lot of noise going on and there's a lot of bleed from just the typical noises of day to day? It might not. It might make your voice sound a little bit different than you're expecting, depending on the mic, depending on where the placement is, so forth and so on. So, I appreciate them. I like them for what we do. It works great for certain applications, but yeah, as far as us here, we record in the everything gets recorded in the room except for drums, obviously, right? You can't put drums inside here, but everything else, whether it's guitar parts, if it's trumpet, saxophone, gets recorded in the room, like with immediate response, immediate reaction, and then it gets played back immediately, really loudly, so you can listen to what it sounds like. So that's our purpose and use for it.
Yeah, and I asked you this question before, but I want people to know this too, because and you know all about it because you're there. But Dre sessions are extremely loud. Is this accurate? What I'm saying?
This is very accurate. Yes, absolutely. This is very accurate for him. And again, I'm only speaking from observation and being in the room and from just being able to listen and hear. Right? It's a feel thing. Right? It's really how it feels. And if you think about feel, sound waves are vibrational. Right? So if those waves are large enough and big enough and loud enough to vibrate the entirety of your body, then you can definitely feel what's going on. Right? Um, and that's just the nature of hip hop and rap music and a few other types of genres. But specifically with what he does, it's very much feel. And sometimes you can only feel so much, and you only feel so much when it's at a certain volume. So we tune the rooms very specifically to be loud enough to take that much power, to push the board that much, because he wants to hear it loud, but he also wants to hear it with clarity. And yeah, the simple answer to your question is absolutely very loud.
I've heard, and yeah. That's and those are PCMs behind you, the near field
Oh
monitors.
yeah,
Okay,
PMCs, PMC.
PMC are PMC.
These are PMC 226s.
Okay,
They're a little bit older model of their near fields.
right.
They have 228s that are a little bit bigger than the ones we have here, and now they have I think they're called PMC 6.2s or 6Ts or something like that. But it's like their newer version of that speaker. But yeah, the way we came to those was obviously we used to use NS10s, Yamaha NS10s for the longest
Right.
time. And again, Dre listens very loudly and also mixes very loudly. And we were blowing Yamaha NS10s pretty frequently. So I used to have to order parts, 20 to 25 pieces at a time. That's 20 woofers and 20 tweeters at a time just to have them on supply. Because once it comes time for him to mix, we have to put in a fresh pair of NS10s, and then he's going to beat the hell out of them mixing the way that he does, and they'll pop. You know what I mean? And we've had fused versions of the NS10s that have gotten us a little bit more mileage of them. There's a way that you can put a fuse in there that'll pop before the speaker pops.
Hmm.
That's helped. But eventually you can only push a speaker so much before it gets tired or fatigued or just dies on you, right?
Hmm.
So we used to do that a lot. And then unfortunately Yamaha, decided to stop producing parts for those. So we had to figure something else out. So yeah, we tested a handful of speakers out at different sizes, atoms. We tried KRK, a little bit of everything, and the PMCs were number one, sounded good, and at the same time they didn't crap out when you give them a lot of volume. So that was the other main thing, is literally you got to yeah, you really have to stress test them to make sure that they're not gonna, if they're dying every time he uses them, that's no good at all. Like, that's not what he wants to pay for. So they've lasted us a good time, a good amount of time. PMC's been really helpful. Maurice over at PMC helps us out a lot when we need stuff, when we buy parts, when it's time to do some mixing. And no, they hold up well. They hold up really well, thankfully enough. I'm sure there's a handful of other speakers that are out there near fields that do a good job. but these have lasted for us, so we're rocking with them until something else happens, God forbid.
Yeah, because I've heard those at Ventures King, and I liked them. And they kind of remind me. Well, I'm not gonna say they remind me NS10s, but in terms of how you place them on the horizontal, placement there, and but they're like, this is my opinion. I've only heard one time,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
they sound like NS10s, but they're more. The image is better. It's fuller, but it does have that mid range NS10 thing.
Definitely. Yeah, they definitely have that going on, which is helpful, the mid-range part of them. And then same thing like you said, they are a little bit fuller on the low end, so you can push them and still get a lot more of the bass response that you really couldn't get with an NS10. You're with an NS10, you're really just honing in on the mid-range because that's pretty much all it does, right?
Right.
But yeah, these extend a little bit more on the low end, so you can get that to translate a lot well. Um, and then as far as like the way that we voice the rooms, we make sure that the main speakers that you see back there are
Yeah. What are those? Yeah. I'm sorry.
those are custom. Actually, yeah, those are custom. Those were made by a gentleman, rest in peace, a great gentleman by the name of Bill Jenkins, who was able to source the speaker components from Italy. They're Italian speakers.
Hmm.
They're called Vital is the brand name, and we had to find a different version because the ones that we had previously were getting blown a lot too, right? So he was able to come up with custom components. Those are, as far as the high frequency driver inside, it's a Radian driver is the name of the brand. That's the that handles everything from the high frequency response. And then those 15-inch speakers up there are five tiles, if you can see them up there. And then we have 18-inch subwoofers that are behind the console.
Hmm.
Yeah, just because they can hold up and they can take the power rating that we needed to put into them. We have some pretty heavy duty amps in a machine room next door in our tech shop. Because again, the priority is getting it loud first, and then the next thing is making sure that they sound good and have enough clarity to actually mix on. So that's kind of one of the bigger differences about our studios versus most commercial studios. Most of them are usually flat. You usually voice a room to be flat so that you can hear exactly what you're supposed to be hearing. The way that we do things is we make them nice and loud, and then we try to match them to the PMC so that when you go between the two, there isn't a huge difference in the sound,
Hmm.
and then you have a better kind of reference on how it sounds when it's really loud, and then how it sounds when you're on your near fields and you're mixing more critically. So that's a little bit different style of how we do things. And really, it's just based on because of the music that we make and how loud it is and the production and all that stuff. So just a different application is what it is.
Yeah, that's a lot of science in that room. That's a lot. Yeah,
A little bit, yeah.
I respect that. That's yeah, because you got to tune your room, if you will, how you need it to be as an engineer or
Exactly.
producer, and yeah. So that's and we're getting, hey y'all, this is a treat here. We're getting the inside details here right now because this is I mean I'm enjoying this very greatly. But let's talk about this. How do you balance your career and your personal life and
Mhm.
family, and how do you balance all that? Because I know you're very busy and all the things you do. How do you balance that?
Oh man. I was gonna make a terrible joke about drinking and doing drugs, but no. I'm very, very, very fortunate that um I have, as far as a support system, my wife is the brains of the whole operation. I have two boys, two sons, and yeah, she's really the reason that I work in the evenings. I've worked nights since about 2011. And before that, when I was working in post production, I was working, regular daytime hours, but not even daytime hours, excuse me. I was working anywhere from 9 in the morning till whenever they would send me home, and sometimes that would be 8, 9, 10 at night, because I was just, I wanted to be around and do so much, learn as much as I could, do so much, and make sure to keep my job. And I've been, excuse me, conditioned to do that for so long. And she has really been the one to make sure that everything else that needs to be taken care of is taken care of. So I would love to say I have some amazing organizational skills, or some super duper system about how to balance everything evenly. But no, not at all, man. I'm very much a I try to deal with things as they come, but even that is can be distracting sometimes. So I'm very fortunate. Like I said, if I had to do it all on my own, God only knows. But I have a my wife has been extremely supportive, especially with the hour changes and the missed holidays and days off and just the juggling of all kinds of stuff that's work related and being, my job requires me to be available at least by the phone in 24 hours a day if need be. That's changed a little bit because of the pandemic, obviously, but even still, like, my jobs and my work have always kind of required a certain priority, which can be tough to do. So, I do my best to try to make it up when I can in my personal time. She runs the show as far as what needs to happen in home life, and I could definitely be doing a lot more to help her out in that regard. But um, yeah, I'm the only reason I'm even a fraction of successful is because of her. Yeah, she makes sure that everything top to bottom is taken care of so that I can actually apply most of the little brain power that I have to my work, if anything. Yeah.
So have you been called 2 in the morning, like, okay, you got to be here within an hour, and we're going to be here for 2 days? Has that happened before?
That has happened before, actually, during the Compton album.
Okay.
Man, once we got towards the finish album of doing the Compton album, back around 2015, 2016, that was like crunch time. That was damn near 24 hours a day, mixing sessions. And I was fortunate, like I live close by. I'm about I've never been further than maybe 15 minutes away from where I work, which is a blessing too, especially in LA,
Right, right.
where any day, any little bit of traffic can cost you half an hour or more of time, right? But I've been really fortunate again, as I'll repeat, that I've been in close proximity to either get over there and take care of things myself, and at least round up the troops, round up the team of people that I have that help me out, and we slowly kind of put things together with enough time to make sure that it's ready to go. And on top of that, thankfully, like, working for Dre is a huge blessing, not only because of who he is, but because he isn't he he demands a lot from his work and his music and his creative process, which he should. So in the room, there's no messing around, right? And then as far as everything the studio, that's concerned with the studio, getting here and making things happen, like, um, he isn't looking to get on anybody's case. He understands that things take time. So we have a little bit of grace there, which is fortunate. But even still, you're working with somebody that is the gold standard for what they do. So you do the best you can to make sure that you're right there with him. And as long as he gets to come in, or whoever he has comes in, if it's something that he wants done or to get done by somebody else, that's what we're here to do. It's what we get paid for. And thankfully, within this time, there's only been a few hiccups here and there, but um, yeah, we that's pretty much the nature of my job and the people that I work with. We do our best to just react, but I'm so used to it. I've been doing it for so long that I don't know what I would be doing if it wasn't the case. You know what I mean? If I had more free time, I'm not even sure how I would use it. I'd probably be staring at my phone like a crazy person. So, um, it's I try to use it as a learning example. For my kids, whenever they get to a point where they're working, or they hopefully start their own businesses. It's just like, hey, if you're going to do something, you're making an agreement to put everything into it if it's important to you, if it's valuable to you, and to keep that in mind, and hopefully you get out of it what is helpful, and just kind of use that as a guideline for whatever you do. That's the thing that I'm really blessed to be able to learn, is like, Dre is indicative and is an example of really the true dedication of wanting to be the best at what you do, because that's what he still does to this day. Still makes music with the intention of making the absolute best thing, even if it's an idea, if it's something like he's gonna 100% put all of his time and attention into doing that. So to be able to have that as the as the main example for what we're supposed to do, uh it's just the best possible reason to want to just make sure you put your whole ass, for lack of a better word, into everything that you do, you know.
Right, 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 right. Yeah, right. So let's talk about projects you worked on that you've mixed, mastered, or produced.
Sure.
Yes.
Absolutely. I've been really fortunate to hey, again, there's the word again, fortunate. I have, as far as engineering is concerned, back when I was in post production, I was able to do a handful of light mixing on deleted scenes and some bonus scenes for movies like Rush Hour 3 and Harold and Kumar. I think it's Escape from Guantanamo and Saw 3. Did some light mixing, sound design, mixed some trailers when I was over there. When I was over at Interscope, golly, that I can think of. As far as engineering is concerned, I did a little bit of assisting for some American Idol stuff, a little bit of assisting for the Kendrick stuff, but mostly uncredited at that time. Because again, sometimes you just kind of fill in and you help out where you can, and you know,
Right, right.
it's just the nature of what it is. But most recently, I do a lot more mastering work now, just in the way my day to day is and whatever time I have freely available. And thankfully, because I have my gig here and I do a few other things, like I'm able to master and work on projects that I enjoy, or that friends and kind of family ask me to do. So I recently mastered, excuse me, a project for Focus, who's one of our producers at Aftermath. He's been with Dre for shit, damn near 20 years or so. He put out an independent project that I was able to master for him. I've done a lot of mastering work for some artists out in Portland, interestingly enough, which I don't really have any ties to Portland. It just kind of so happened over meeting people on the internet that I started doing some work for some artists, an artist named Dante Thomas out from out of there, an artist named Boca, their kind of crew of people um, that I've done some stuff for. What else? What else? There's an artist, a good friend of mine from North Carolina named Bobby James, who we did a smaller independent project a few years ago for him. Did some mastering for that. Um, we just put out some Christmas songs. A young lady who's a good friend and actually works here, but she's a vocalist. Her name's Jonna Booth. She put out a Christmas project last year. We did some light production and mastered one of the songs for that. Um, but yeah, that's I'm actually mastering some tracks for some other artists from Portland, which I probably have. I need to get that done as well. Um, and then just trying to jump into some Dolby Atmos mixing for some people, this to see if
Awesome.
they'd be interested in that. Just to kind of stay sharp, stay in my day to day. I don't do a lot of audio engineering. I don't really do engineering here at the studio like that. I might help out some of the other staff engineers, and I'm just a geek, so I like to be in here when they're doing stuff. So I'll come in and take a listen and just offer whatever insight, or help them print something, or help bounce stems if they want to go eat, or whatever the case is. So stuff like that, it's not necessarily for credit, but I just I like being around for stuff like that. I helped a really good friend and artist named Black Soul. He did some mixing here, and he was nice enough to throw me a mix credit, even though all I did was just kind of help him with a little bit of feedback. Um, so yeah, I've been really fortunate to do a lot of independent type stuff as far as the audio engineering is concerned. And the only reason I don't do it more heavily is just because of my time, because I have my regular day work. Obviously, there's things with family that I have to take care of in terms. I drop my kids off at school and pick them up, and the life of an audio engineer, I have a big appreciation for, because you dedicate a lot of hours to sitting in front of a mix, or recording, or even mastering. Like, every facet of it requires a good amount of time. There's really no, unless AI figures out how to make all that easy, or you can do it through your brain or something, it still takes a lot of real time hours to do all that work. You know what I mean? Which, to hopefully, to anybody watching, is like, that's why engineers, give your engineers a little bit of respect as well too. Same thing like producers. It takes you real time to craft music, to record music, to mix it. Like, all those pieces take real time to do. So I don't do that on a day-to-day basis, but I'm blessed. I'm still around it. I still get to offer my insight. I still get to learn, the new versions of stuff. There's still plugins here that we get from time to time that we all mess with and dive into, and I just try to stay tuned into what's going on, as far as audio is concerned, and try to continue to be a gearhead. Even though I don't have as much gear as I would like to buy, I still try to stay hip to what's available, what's out there, because yeah, it's just, I still love it that much. And once I have the time, or once maybe I have my own studio, I can dive back into that, and put some more man hours into it. But yeah, for now, it's mostly independent stuff, mostly people that are friends, that people whose music I enjoy is the other blessing too. Sometimes you got to do projects where ideally you might not really like the songs, but you're mixing it because somebody paid you to mix it, and it's there's nothing wrong with that. But yeah, I'm really fortunate to be able to do work that I enjoy working on. So that's, for me, that's a bonus for anything.
When you're mastering, are you doing a typical thing where you're rolling off 20 hertz, 20 kilohertz? Or are you just going by the song? Because people talk about you don't need the 20 hertz until because we can't hear it. And also to add on to that, what is your mastering chain?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a really good question. To answer the first part, no, I really don't roll off anything on the high end. It again depends on what the music is. Most of the stuff that I do is been mostly hip hop, mostly rap music stuff. Um, so there's still, I think, as far as mastering is concerned, because I'm not Bernie Grundman, or Big Bass Gardner by any means, or whatever, but there's still harmonics, and there's still content within certain frequencies that I think we can perceive. You may not be able to hear it. I think that it's like air, right? Like, you can't see air when you're breathing it, but it's there. I kind of take that into account, so I try not to leave anything out. The only thing I try to do, at least with the stuff that I'm given, is to, um, as far as mastering is concerned, amplify what's there, polish what is there. I only really do corrective anything if I really need to. And it's only if I can't get a hold of the engineer who mixed it, just to kind of say, like, hey, there's a little bit, maybe if you do a little bit of EQ here or there, this might help. Because mastering, what it does, um, what it's supposed to do, is supposed to, it's like that final layer of polish that you put on, that final layer. Oh wow, final layer of wax on a car, or whatever you want to call it, right? That makes it shine. Everything that needs to be there is there, but once you put that polish on it, you might notice a little sting over here. You might notice a scratch over there that you didn't really see before.
Hmm.
So, what mastering can also do is point out certain minor flaws, right? Minor flaws in the mixing that can be addressed there. Not that they're bad or anything. It's just like, hey, your S's are going to be a little bit more present, because you maybe need a little bit more de-essing on your mix, or maybe um your low end response, when you were mixing on different kinds of speakers. So your low end is a little bit louder than it needs to be. So maybe we'll do a little bit. You can either pull it back in the mixing stage, maybe do some compression, or EQing there, or I'll have to do it on the mastering end, which is a little tougher. But again, it depends on what the content is. It depends on what the song is doing. When I do stuff, I master with the feeling in mind. So I'll listen to the song a handful of times, as many times as I can to kind of understand like what the main points are. Obviously, your hook or even like a bridge might be the main part of a song, and then I'll start with those things. But as far as mastering is concerned, excuse me, um, I still use Ozone 8 actually because I haven't upgraded because I'm cheap. But I use Ozone 8. I actually have gotten into the God particle,
Hey,
which for anybody, trust me, I felt the same way. No disrespect to nobody, but if you don't know anything about mastering and you don't want to send it off to some website to do, some internal processing for a master, the God particle actually isn't a bad alternative. It will definitely tell you if your mix needs work. That's for sure. So it has its uses and it definitely has some cool harmonic stuff that it does. But I'm an Ozone 8 guy. I like their process. I like the way that you can analyze what your reference is. It's a really cool, like if you only have so much time to do some stuff, it can get you in a ballpark. But depending on what the song is, I'll usually start within there with an EQ, usually the first thing, and then I'll go into their stereo imager. Just again, depends on what the song needs. I may not even use it. Um, EQ, stereo imaging, and then I believe it's a vintage limiter, and then the maximizer, I think, is what it is.
yes.
And that's usually like the core components of what I'll do. If there's something specific, maybe like a vintage EQ, I might throw in that chain, but it's usually a combination of those processes. Maybe I'll do use the dynamic EQ that they have in there, but I try not to, only because again, I think most of that corrective kind of work can be done in the mix. Um, so I try not to. I really try to do very little to it if I can. My goal is not to make it sound tonally different than anything. Um, the only time I've had to do that is I did a whole project for somebody once, and I did every song. And of course, some of the songs are just tonally they're different. Some are louder than others, and it's matching all of the pieces so that everything sounds uniform. Uh, but yeah, more often than not, EQ, and that's only if I really have to. I really, again, I'd rather not use any EQ if I'm mastering. But sometimes you can boost the low end a little bit, or you can smooth out some of the there's some vocal harshness that might happen around for male voices. For female voices, it's like 75 100 hertz and up, somewhere in that range. Sometimes can be a little bit sharper sometimes. But yeah, I'll use that. And then I like to use there's another plugin called the loudness penalty, actually, that I
Never
came across.
okay.
That It's a website, it's loudnesspenalty.com, where you can upload any version of something, and what it'll do is it will tell you exactly how much each of the streaming services will lower that. Because as some people may or may not know, regardless of how loud you master something, Spotify still, their requirement for what a master should be at is different than Apple's. If you've ever listened to Apple Music and Spotify in the same song and gone back and forth, Apple Music is actually, I think it's about 2 or 3 dB louder than Spotify is. So the streaming services have their own different style of doing things. So they're each going to do additional limiting to the song depending on how loud it is. So what loudness penalty does is actually tells you, hey, Apple Music is going to dip this by another 3 dB. So you might want to take that into consideration, or you can use it to push the boundaries of what's going to happen when it's on the streaming services. So I use that as well. Um, Obviously, the waves meter, for checking lufts
Right.
and all that fun stuff. But honestly, I don't use that so much as I listen to things on. There's a pair of Beats Pro headphones that I like to listen to stuff on because it gets really loud on there, and I can tell, for me at least, I can tell if it's either too bright or too harsh, or the low end responds pretty well. and then if I'm lucky, I can bring it in here and play it off of um, the near field speakers and the mains, and just see how it translates. And play it in the car. I'll play it on AirPods, just play it on a bunch of different things that I'm familiar with. And yeah, and then I'll go back and forth with whoever I did it for, and have them listen on whatever they prefer. And then from there, just compare notes and either make it louder, or maybe there's some EQing to be done, and take it from there. But yeah, Ozone for me has worked really well. Um, there's another mastering plugin that I think it's called HWMG. It's the um,
Hmm.
I'll have to find the name of it, but it's also a mastering plugin. It's got some soft clipping and hard clipping functions in it as well, which a lot of people are starting to get into, or at least understand. Only thing is, for me, it takes a lot of processing power, so Ozone works a lot better, and that's why I haven't upgraded either. I'm still on an older laptop when I do my mastering stuff. So, I'm working with what works for me for the time being, until I can get me something fancier. But yeah, that's kind of the process, and it changes by the song. And sometimes, again, for me, like, for anybody that mixes out there, mastering, if you mix with mastering in mind, meaning if you mix and you don't make your mix as loud as it possibly needs to be, and you give some headroom, and you can get everything as clear as possible and as evenly balanced as you can in your mix, then mastering really should only just be like a coat of polish. And obviously it'll raise the volume of what it needs to be, just um, because of the medium. Before it used to be records, so it had to be a certain loudness before, and then it was CDs and tapes and all that stuff. And you're really mastering because of the nature of whatever that format is. Now it's digital. There's high res versions of stuff. There, like, everything is getting upgraded. So at a certain point, it's going to even out, but mastering is just getting it to the point where it will translate and play at the best volume at whatever that medium or format is. So it's really more important in my mind not to disregard mastering, because you should do it, but mixing is where you want to take the best approach to how you want it to sound, because mastering will just take it up to that one notch more, that'll make it sound like you perceive all the songs that you like to be. So yeah, it's my long-winded version of mastering.
No, we're enjoying all of this. I'm soaking this up. Like I said, much respect for doing this, and yeah. So you're never really cutting or adding no more than really like 2 to 3 dB, 2 to 3 dB.
Not if I don't have to. Yeah, not if I don't have to. Um, I think there's maybe been one or two times where I've had to do some additional, like, surgical, again, mostly like de-essing stuff that when in the mixing stage, like, you can make your vocals sound nice and present, but they're not going to be harsh yet. You're going to hear them pretty evenly, and
Right.
then it won't be until you get to mastering where it's just like, oh, like 8,000 hertz is a little bit more pronounced in your mix, and now it's kind of cutting like a little bit more than it should, or it's gonna, it's gonna start to hurt if you listen to it really loud. I listen to a lot of stuff really loudly, so maybe that's my problem. But um, just little things that will just stick out and be a little bit more noticeable than they should be, right? Because
Right.
again, the most notable parts of the song should be the song itself, not different parts of the frequency spectrum. If you hear, which is funny because older rock music, if you listen to it, certain songs, like, it might be all drums and cymbals because that's just the way that it was mixed. But it's the feel of the song. But yeah, it just depends on the content of it. I try not to. If I really have to do something where it's like I'm dipping out like a whole bunch on the low end or something,
Right.
I'll make a recommendation. And then again, if you can or can't, I'll do the best that I possibly can with it to keep it contained so it's not distorting. Number one, that's the other thing. And then yeah, I'll try to do my best to not adjust the tonality of it
Right.
when I'm doing mastering, just because it can sound a lot different from mix to master if I have
Right.
to do any of those additional touches. That's happened a couple times where try to fix some stuff. It's like, hey, the vocals sound like they're lower now, and it's just like, well, I had to dip just a little because this was kind of sticking out too much. I can either keep it that way, or if you want to, drop the vocal down a dB and a half, that
Right.
might even it out, like little stuff like that. But the only thing that can make it difficult is when you're working with independent artists sometimes, and they may be working with a mixing. Somebody might be mixing something for them that I don't want to say they're not professional, but they're learning. They might be learning the process, and they're good mixers. They're doing good mixes, but you don't know what you don't know sometimes. You don't,
Right.
unless you've done this for however many hours a day, and and this is your everyday thing. There's just things that we all learn on a day-to-day basis working with audio. So I try to present it in a very constructive way, and only because it's like, hey, it'll save us time if you have the time to go in there, just give me a bounce that has this or that. Um yeah, but it's a conversation, and you never want to. It's hard to tell people sometimes, because some people can get a little personal about their mixes, or sensitive, which is
Right.
fine. I totally understand. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's nothing wrong with that. But again, for the sake of whatever you're trying to do, for whatever the song is, I just want to make sure it still sounds like what you believe it to be or perceive it to be. That's what it's like good sound, or visual effects in a movie, right? If it looks fake, you're gonna know right off. Like, even with the way things sound, if it don't sound the way that you perceive it to be, then you're already out of it. So even those things can be nuanced and very specific and detailed. So my job is to just get you what you understand, what you believe it to be, and just um yeah, amplify that as best I can.
I hope I don't mess this quote up, but there's a quote Dre said when he sends his mixes to the mastering stage or mastering engineer, he likes to put the vocals a dB higher because he noticed when he was not doing that, the vocals kind of were drowned out. Is that accurate or
Mm. Think I remember him mentioning that a while back too. But the concept of what that is yeah, it's accurate, because what typically happens between mix and master is you'll get a nice balance between everything, and then once you get to the mastering stage, where you're, especially now with digital, like, your brick wall limiting stuff so that it doesn't clip or distort, right? But you're trying to get the most out of that. You're trying to squeeze as much volume out of that as you possibly can. A lot of times, with the way that we hear things, because we hear that high mid range and like vocal area, well, we can perceive that. And when you master stuff, it kind of, that's the best way to say it. The music can actually be a lot more present than
okay?
you remember the mix being.
Okay.
So, if you imagine it kind of like a hill, your vocals are kind of here, your music will stand out and be even with that, and now your vocals um might feel like they kind of sink into the music, if that makes sense.
Right. Right.
So if you push your vocals a little bit more than you perceive that they should be in the mastering stage, they'll be a little bit more pronounced, right?
Right.
So it's just that concept, because again, it depends on the mix. But the thing that I would hope to let people know, that when they're mixing with their vocals, is not to be shy. Don't be shy with your vocals, because that's the main component of a song, if that's what it is, right? You want people to hear the words, you want people to hear the vocals. So it seems a little, sometimes when you hear it and you're doing your mix, it seems like they might be too loud. But if you keep in mind that when you're in the mastering stage, everything else is going to also come up and be louder as well. You still want your vocals to sit on top of that and not get buried by everything else coming to the front, right?
Hmm.
um, so yeah, so that's kind of where that concept is. When you come to the mastering stage, uh push the vocals a little bit more than you normally would, and then from there you can tell, oh, okay, maybe they're a little too loud, or maybe not as much. And then you get to a point where everything slowly but surely during the mastering stage kind of rounds out neatly around the vocals, in that case.
Yes, y'all. Did y'all hear that, Jim? Paul just dropped there. That is a bomb right there. That is a wow. Did y'all hear that right there? That's wow. That's inside detail right there. Definitely. And
Yeah,
like I
don't
said,
be shy with your vocals, man. Push,
yeah,
get them out there.
yeah. That's
You can
that's
always
that's
you can always dial them back, but if they're buried, they're buried. Then you got people like, huh, what did they say? I have no idea. So
there's a particular song I'm not going to mention that's pretty popular nowadays. It's a good song, but the vocals are buried, and I'm like, now I'm hearing what you're saying, Paul. I'm pretty sure the engineer or maybe even producer was like, let's do it like that. And then when it went to the mastering stage, it just got really drowned out. And but it's a great song, great production. But just the vocals are just they're not as vibrant as they should be, in my opinion. But yeah,
same.
yeah, yeah.
Same.
It's
I've
just
heard a few things where it's like I love the song, I like the production, I like the groove. It's super cool, and the vocals are there, and it's just like I think I know what they're saying, but I can't really make it out. Um, and then you want to at a certain point, if you like a song enough, you're going to repeat it, you're going to sing it, you're going to rap with it or whatever, right? It's like I would, but I have no idea what they're saying.
mhm.
um, can kind of happen. So yeah, and it comes from at least in my experience, like yeah, push your vocals out more than you would think. It seems kind of weird sometimes, and especially like with an artist, if you have somebody in there that's like, oh, like artists are also very sensitive about the way that their vocals sound. So there might be whoever that was might have mixed that with the artist in the room, and it's like, nah, bring my vocals down. I don't want to be out there like that, and
Mhm.
that's totally understandable. But it just requires some quality control and some critical listening after the master, just to make sure like things are really getting heard.
Yeah, yeah, and also behind you, that's the SSLK. I thought it was the J, but can you explain to the people the difference between those two consoles there?
Sure, yeah, I'll do my best. The SSLK console that we have here is one of the last analog consoles that SSL had put in production. There's not really a whole lot made. I believe it was only a couple hundred that they actually made in its entirety, like around the world. So um a limited run of what they did there. Prior to that, it was a J. They had their J console, and then before that, a G and E series, which most of you can find in almost every studio. There's usually an SSL like G series or even an E series around. Most of the more notable studios and even schools. A lot of the audio schools in town, they have an E or a G series just as a good starting point. But the major difference between the J and a K um, is in the way that you can push the master bus on a K console gives you some more transparency, a little bit more than like a J would. A J, if I understand correctly, like once you push it to a certain point, there's a little bit of like I guess distortion is the only way that I can use it, but not like tape saturation distortion.
Got it.
Just like a hey, you're pushing the circuitry type of thing. Whereas a K, they accounted for that, so you could really push the hell out of a K console,
Got it.
and it wouldn't break up or kind of um you know uh, uh, give out on you like the previous versions are. They're all amazing consoles. The SSLs, they made them so you could literally do anything and everything with them, as far as routing is concerned, as far as internally and externally. The EQs are classic. Even the dynamic sections of an SSL channel, like the preamps on an SSL channel, as long as they're clean and exercised, to have one obviously is a luxury. But yeah, K console, just you can. Dre likes the way that it sounds when he pushes the stereo bus really heavily, which he does, and he uses all onboard processing and dynamics, and like he still very much uses the analog side of that as far as mixing is concerned, and he likes the way that sounds. That's why we use it. And
Mhm.
then of course we have Pro Tools and other plugins in the box that we supplement that with. But yeah, again, I know there's more specific, obviously the computer section through each of those different generations is different.
Right.
recall, different snapshots that you can save for stuff on the board. Automation is a little bit, it's more improved over the course of everything. So,
Right.
um, yeah, just those little nuances that make it a little bit more unique than the next. But yeah, that's why we have them. We have all K consoles in all of our rooms. So
So when Dre is mixing on his console, is he printing every channel back into Pro Tools, or is it a two
mm,
track, or is it stems? What's the process on that?
good question, really good question. Eventually, if there's time, we'll print stems. But traditionally, just for the sake of whatever, for completion of whatever it is, we're printing through the stereo bus and then printing a 2 track back into Pro Tools.
Okay.
Yeah. So the whatever's going through the stereo bus will be patched directly into Pro Tools and printed to Pro Tools. And then after the fact, if instructed, or the engineers want to be able to save, the mix, then they'll go in there and they'll print stems to Pro Tools just to have for later. But
Okay.
as far as him, he's about getting the idea captured and saved to Pro Tools at least as a stereo track. Yeah.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Okay. So you're not using automation on there. You're not recalling mixes on the console, nothing like that.
We are recalling mixes depending on what the mix is,
Okay.
but most of the automation is it depends, right? It depends. Most of the automation will happen in Pro Tools for certain movements,
Got it.
and he does a lot of the balancing and EQing and dynamic processing on the board itself. So, um, yeah, I'm trying to remember how most of the automation is in the box, if
Okay.
anything. Yeah,
Okay.
the board is mostly like it's sound and tone and analog feel for whatever the song or idea is.
Okay. Is Dre a plug-in person, or is he into plugins, or is he mainly just analog?
Mostly analog. We
Okay.
have all the plugins we can possibly use,
Okay.
um, but yeah, mostly analog. That's again, he trusts his engineers to 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 be on top of that type of thing. You know what I
Got
mean? And he is very much uh, um, he has his process and how he does things, and that's how it works for him. And then the extension of him is, his engineer and whatever. He knows obviously what a delay is and reverb and all those concepts are. But that's kind of where the engineers, that extension of what he's trying to of what he believes he wants to hear, and making that happen, and how that sounds. But yeah, think there's just way too many plugins to have to run them down the list of what
it.
of what
Right.
you could do. He's just like, hey, I need a reverb on this, I need a delay on this, I want this to sound like so and so, like, make it happen. And then that's where the engineer does their handiwork.
Okay. So let's talk about. I'll put this on the screen here. Let me know if you cannot see this, but let me see. This should be it here. Boom. So let's talk about Hitmaker and how this came about and the process, and how us artists and audio engineers need to get on this right now. Because to me, I'm looking at this. This is like the start of the new wave of SoundCloud in terms of putting your stuff out there and showing your work and networking. But yeah, can we talk about this?
Definitely. No, I appreciate that. Yeah. And thank you for bringing that up. Um, yeah, so hitmaker.com is a project and a startup that I was very, very blessed to be involved with and introduced to, and I advise and I've invested in as well in the last year and a half or so. But yeah, so what Hitmaker is we are a collaboration platform, right? So what we're trying to accomplish is we're trying to get more tools and resources for audio engineers, for producers, for artists, any creative really who's dealing with making music, or whether you make a podcast or anything of that nature, right? Not everybody unfortunately has the luxury of getting into a room, that looks like this, to get in with their favorite musicians, or whatever pieces of the puzzle they feel they want to make some music, right? And that's the only unfortunate drawback, right? Some of us are in our home studios, we're in our bedrooms, we're in our personal studios, and you're only limited to what you have, whatever resources you have directly, right? So with Hitmaker, we want to be able to take the possibility of working remotely with people, finding people on the internet around the world, whatever the case may be, and creating a space where you can work on music and work on it together, but also follow along the process. You can, if you have the benefit of being in a studio, like the people you see on screen, you might start off with an idea or a song or whatever the case is. And once you leave the studio, everything kind of goes on pause, right? Because you're waiting until you get back in the studio again or whatever the case might be, right? And what typically happens between that time is, if you have an engineer with there in there with you, your engineer might be the one with the sessions on the hard drive, and they might have made you a bounce for the night of what y'all did, and they'll text that to you maybe, or they'll send you a link on Google Drive or Dropbox or WeTransfer or an email. There's a handful of different ways that you'll communicate between the time that you either get back in the studio or you work on that song again, right? So what we want to do is try and streamline that for you. So what you can do with Hitmaker is, if you have a profile and you're a producer or an engineer and you're a part of that project, if we work on a song together, you can upload that demo. You can upload what we did for the day for that session. You can upload it to Hitmaker. You can create a project. You can invite people that were part of that session as collaborators on there. And now we have one centralized location where everybody can access that song. So maybe you left the session that night and it's like, damn, we were working on a bridge and we really couldn't come up with anything. And it hits you, whenever inspiration hits you, like most people, right? And it's like, damn, you know what? There could be a bridge here. So you can access the platform. You can go back to your project. Your audio file is there. You can play it back. You can do notation on it, so you can write in there, hey, I came up with a bridge. I think we should use whatever, this chord progression, or maybe we use this instrumentation. And you can annotate that anywhere on the audio file. And now, when your engineer wakes up in the morning or the producer wakes up the next morning, it's like, oh, cool. So and so, had an idea for a bridge and they got it mapped out here. Great. Now you can continue the flow of creativity whenever you really want to. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to wait until the next time you get into the studio together to share notes or compare notes. You can actively track the length of that project or song or whatever it is, and you have one place that it's centrally located. You can do you can put a voice note down. It's like, hey, I thought of a melody, and it goes like ba, 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 or whatever. You can record that audio on as feedback. You can invite people to get, people that you respect. You might have somebody that's a friend of yours that you really trust to help you craft songs, and you just want to have them listen to it. You can get them invited to the project, have them take a listen, to have them give some feedback. And maybe, hey, we need a trumpet player or something, or maybe on the back end here we might need some strings. I know a string player. Let's put all those pieces together. So really the core of it is collaboration. Is really, anybody can go out there and make music on your own, and you can be Russ or somebody and do everything in house, which is awesome. But most of us do a lot of stuff in concert with other people and our friends and people that we mess with. So this will hopefully be a tool and resource that can add some efficiency, add some better communication to what you're doing. You know what I mean? You might have it's also worked really well in the past for producers. If you have a bunch of beats on a hard drive somewhere that you haven't backed up, um,
Mhm.
it's cloud based. So if you put your beats up on here and you save them, you have something that you can travel with versus Google Drive or Dropbox. There's one method to do that. I use it for mastering. So if somebody sends me a final mix, I'll upload it to here, and I'll have the final mix up in a project, and then I'll throw my mastered version up there and upload it. I'll share the project with the person, and they can go back and forth and listen to what it was before, and then listen to the mastered version, and then they can give me notes like, oh, you know what? Hey, let's maybe I need to do the vocal a little bit louder here, or maybe you can change this in the master, whatever the case is. But it's to help the flow of communication, um, and just trying to minimize having to bounce around from text to email to whatever is out there. And yeah, just be a hub for all that. And we're adding new features. It's always we're going to be updating that as much as we can. We're open to feedback, because again, this is something that we want to build with people that are creative and maximize it for everybody out there. I know how I use it. I know how a few other people use it, but it's only going to get better if people really dive into it, take a look at it, and offer your insight on what it could be, so that it can be beneficial for everybody that's out there. So yeah, come check it out.
Yeah, and what I like too is, correct me if I'm wrong. Just like we transfer and Dropbox, Hitmaker is very transparent. So what you're hearing, you're in as producers or audio engineers, because we're very sensitive about our work, and we don't want this internet to, add these artifacts or change how it sounds tone out, the tone of it. But Hitmaker, you're hearing what you're putting on there.
Correct. Yeah, we don't do any additional compression. Whatever resolution, whatever sample rate, whatever bit rate you upload audio there, that's going to stay the same when you stream it. When you play it back, it's not going to play back a dumbed down MP3 version of that. I think Dropbox, not to take shots at any companies, but I think Dropbox has compression involved with what they do, obviously, because the nature of the internet. Um, but certain companies have to do certain things that limit the quality of what you're hearing, and we don't do that. Where everything is exactly as you uploaded it there. That's one of the things we want to make sure and keep. And we don't have a mobile app just yet, but that's in the works. But again, you can still access the website from your phone. You can still play back whatever you created in terms of a project. If you have music that you're presenting to people that you want to play for them, or you're presenting your mixes to people to kind of sell them on your work or whatever, or just compare notes, or network and build relationships, you can, as an audio engineer, you can sell your mixing and mastering services on there. As a producer, you can sell beats if you want to. We do have that capability, but you can also we want to try and push people towards working together and collaborating. Like, there's a lot of people on the internet that'll hit you up on Twitter talking about, let's build and let's collab and let's do this and do that, and that's cool. But we want to create one space where you can really have those discussions. You can negotiate, like you would. You can get with an artist. You can develop an artist. You can really build together, so that everybody feels included. Versus just not that there's anything wrong with it, but if I make a beat and I just put it out on the internet for $20 and sell it, and then somebody from Oklahoma buys it and makes a song, I might never even know, except for the fact that they bought my beat, right?
Hmm.
And we want to push things more towards being a part of that conversation. So if you do sell a beat, we'll put you in a collaboration project with that person. Go back and forth with them. Uh there's a synergy that you can create in making a song that you would do in a studio. So it's kind of building out that real life situation that you would, if you ever get to the point where you go to a studio. You're going to work together. A producer's going to change the music. They're gonna mold it around the artist, the rapper, singer, whatever the case is,
Hmm.
and you're gonna work together. It's collaborative. That's the main thing. So, yeah. But what you put up there is what you get. We're not trying to dumb anything down, and we want to make it so that you have exactly what you need at your disposal, and it's with you as wherever you go. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah, y'all check out Hitmaker definitely, and yeah, yeah. Paul explained that very well on that. But yeah, y'all check that out. If you can't find it, hit me up, and I'll send you the link to go to it. But yeah, definitely check that out, y'all.
Yeah.
And
Definitely.
yeah,
We have a Discord community that we're still growing out, for people that want to just ask questions. I'm on there. You can always hit me up. Whatever the case is, I'm happy to help out. Whether it's the website specific, you can put your gripes and complaints in there, or you can offer ideas on how it can be better. We have a community that we're growing. That's the other main thing, is like building the community out. You know what I'm saying? Like, when you have a collective group of people that want to create, the more information we share, the more everybody grows and learns and gets better at it, right? There's no gatekeeping on this side. Like, we're trying to make sure that everybody can do the best possible get the best possible work done for what they want to do. And if you don't know something, let's talk about it. I'm trying to learn as much as I can from every younger producer and engineer that's out there, just because I'm curious. I want to know. I want to know how you do things, because people can do them better, faster, more efficient. The technology is so much better than it was before. What would take me half an hour might take you 10 minutes, and I want to know what that is. So yeah, we're
Mhm.
definitely about yeah, building the community out. We're gonna have some educational content hopefully soon. Do some interviews with some prominent engineers. Um, yeah, and just get as much information available to help people out. Just be a real helpful tool is the goal for us.
Yeah, because I don't think this really has anything to do with a hitmaker. That might, but like I was telling you before we went live, Paul, I'm using this digital patch bay. I'm not going to name the company. It's okay, but I've noticed during the pandemic, people were utilizing Zoom a lot, and whether it be churches or whatever it may be, and so when you would hear the mixes live or hear the playback,
Mhm.
what the software did and the algorithm did is it summed everything into mono.
Yeah,
And you had to, especially if you had an Apple, you had to get this other audio driver and another one. You had to do this. And my interface I'm using right now is an Apollo Universal Audio Apollo Twin. So I had to have
okay.
all this software to make it sound in terms of what I'm hearing, so the people can hear what I'm hearing.
Right.
And even now, it's still crazy. And then this software I'm using right now, you have to what do you call this thing? You have to put echo cancellation on. And what if I just want to leave the stereo audio on? There's got to be a way in the algorithm or the processing where if somebody doesn't have a headphone, where it doesn't create feedback. So I definitely want to talk to you on that end too, because I personally, when I'm doing these broadcasts or podcasts or whatever, I don't, I want my stuff to sound a certain way, because we're audio engineers and I want it to sound professional.
Absolutely. No, absolutely, man. Let me know. I'm happy to help, and I'm happy to troubleshoot just like you are. I remember being on Zoom and doing the same kind of thing, and that's part of everything that's happened in the last few years is kind of an addition to what Hitmaker has become, that we're trying to help solve. Because yeah, there's a lot of I have some great good personal friends that work at major labels, and a lot of these major label meetings, they're on Zoom, and yeah, they're trying to play major label music for from artists
Mhm.
for execs that are around the country, and you're limited by what Zoom's capabilities are. You know what I mean? It's like you can't listen to SZA's album in mono over Zoom. Like that's terrible, right?
Right.
So, and I'm not using that. I'm just using it as just a
Right.
wild example, right? But um, that's just the nature of what we're dealing with. And again, the pandemic changed everything, so we scramble for what we're trying to do. But yeah, little stuff like that we're AI has been a big thing, machine learning and all that, and there's a handful of companies and products that are gonna be popping up within the next. If you haven't seen them yet, like they're gonna be popping up in the next year, 2 years, and we want to be alongside that, just to make people's lives a little easier. Because there's a lot of options out there. There's a lot of things you could use, but what are you going to use on a frequent basis or a daily basis that'll make it easier for you, and not that whole process that you had to break down. I'm familiar with the same thing, trying to figure out the best way to play audio over Zoom, because I have to share something with somebody, and the system just isn't built for the way that we do things, right? So
Mhm.
there's all those things that you have to troubleshoot. We have to kind of figure workarounds for. So there's going to be a lot of yeah, it's a lot of learning, but it's a lot of as an audio engineer, right? There's a lot of opportunities, I think, to be
Mhm.
able to really get a jump on helping people with things like that. So that's kind of the flip side of that as well, is like we every time a new problem arises, there's going to be a way to people are going to figure out a way to solve it, and make money while they solve it, right? So it's just the nature of the way the world is in technology. So yeah, we're trying to do that in a similar regard as far as Hitmaker is concerned, but just yeah, make your life a little bit easier for the day, if that works. But yeah, I'm open to it too. I'm same as you. I'm on digital music news every day. I'm on Crunchbase for like technology companies that are getting funded and who's getting, invested in to do what. And same thing. Like I'm trying to keep sharp. I'm a little bit older, so I want to make sure I don't get left in the dust either.
Right, right. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Couple more questions here, Paul. But let's talk about well, this is a three-part question.
All right.
Um, so the brand Keep It on the Low, Raised by Wolf, and how did we get that name? I want to know the story behind all that.
Absolutely. So I'll start with keep it on the low.
Okay.
Keep it on the low is actually a great friend of mine. That's her brand. Her name is Lola Romero. Lola A. Romero, if you look up her credits online. And she's an incredible audio engineer, very close friend of mine. I was very, very, very blessed to meet here at the studio. She started off as a runner and yeah, worked her way up to being Dre's chief engineer within a short period of time. But yeah, amazing audio engineer. She's over back. She's from the Bay Area, and she was able to go back there, and now she's the chief engineer at Empire Studios. They have their own studios out there. Empire, the distribution label. But keep it on the low is her brand. That's her moniker. That's her thing. Keep it on the low. That's her Instagram. That's her social media handles and all that good stuff. And the way that I'm involved with that is just as a personal supporter of hers. You know, I do my best to just kind of be kind of do some mentoring with her, kind of help her whenever she needs, whatever the case might be. Um, just because, again, I've been really, really, really fortunate to bump into some really cool people, some really good young people that are in audio that do, you know, a little bit of everything: production, artistry, rapping, all those different things. And you know, being a little bit older, I'm fortunate that they're cool enough to just listen to me or come to me when they need some advice on stuff. So keep it on the low is her brand. um yeah, you know, we I try to feel as much insight as I can, trying to help her when she's doing outside projects. So that's kind of my involvement with that. And then Raised by Wolf. Um, so Raised by Wolf, and I appreciate the question because it's I don't get to explain it too often, right? You know, everybody wants to be clever on the internet with names, so I did my best. But okay, so my ethnicity is I'm Mexican and Spanish. All right, that's the combination of who I am. And for whatever reason, I dove into a YouTube wormhole about Mexican gray wolves that exist in the Southwest. Um, you know, you hear the phrase "someone's raised by wolves." It usually means they're terrible, they're a slob, or they're a savage animal. That just it's all negative, right? So, um, "Raised by wolves" was the first thing that kind of popped into mind. And then in doing some research on the nature of wolves, actually, is they're actually very family oriented animals. You know, they what they do as wild animals is for family. Their pack works in such a way like a small family would. You know, they hunt for the sake of the entire pack. Everybody eats. It's a very it's a very familial type of thing, and they're kind of misunderstood in that way. You know, they're not out there going around terrorizing people. They do what they can for the sake of their pack, right? So anyway, um, I looked at my mother as kind of an example of somebody that's similar. She will do whatever she had to do for the sake of her family. You know, she's again single mom that raised us and took care of us. And over the course of my life, I've been fortunate to run into some very strong women that are very similar mentality. Like they're wonderful, they're kind, but if you mess with their family, they'll mess you up pretty much, right? As they should. So I kind of took the moniker Raised by Wolf to be more indicative of being raised by somebody who's more familial. So it's kind of what's the word, homage, or like uh, um um it encapsulates, you know, what I believe my mother to be. You know, my wife, the way that she takes care of our kids, other women that I'm, you know, fortunate to know that take care of their families without question. um so that's kind of like the long answer where Raised by Wolf came from. I was raised by a wolf, my mother, who took care of us and did everything that she had to do. My sons, their mom is a wolf. They're raised by a wolf as well. Um, and it's kind of that's where that came from. And initially, what it was is just kind of honoring that, but also keep in mind that offering mentorship and giving back everything that I've been fortunate to get and be helped with. It kind of morphed into uh, what I believe that to be, and I've been trying to figure out the details of what where to use that and how to use that. But that's kind of the long way of where I got to that. It's kind of trying to make raised by wolves from a negative thing into a positive thing. So to be raised by a wolf isn't mean that you're bad by any means. It means that you are just very um you're about your personal upbringing and the people that you're close to and the people that you want to see win, and it's a positive thing to work towards that and build together and build community almost, if anything. Yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah, wow. Wow, wow. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
a lot of layers, I know, right?
No, I mean that's that I my podcast, I talk about history and music and or
Mm,
audio engineering of or the industry of audio engineering, and this is, what I like doing on the other side too. I like broadcasting and podcasting and information. So I
that's
combine the two. So I appreciate that. You're not long-winded. I like hearing stories and people's bio, how they did this and how they did this and what's behind the scenes. And you're doing that. You're giving that. I appreciate that. I
try.
definitely do, and like I said, I want to be in the clan and the wolf or raised by wolf clan too. I'm all with that ball. So much respect on that.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Again, I to sound like the broken record that it is, I was really fortunate and lucky for whatever reason. I'm not an extrovert by any means. I'm not Mr. Life of the Party or anything, but um, just by the nature of wanting to be personable, and develop relationship and be interested in people. I'm just interested in people because I know my way of upbringing is totally different than anyone else's, and we could come from the very same place, be in the very same locations. But again, like a lot of the questions you asked, which I appreciate, it's like everybody's got a different answer, so everybody's got a different story, right? And that's the fascinating part. Just as I get older, that's the most fascinating part of anything to me, is learning about where people come from, what their motivations are, what they want to do. And then because of that, like, okay, cool. Like, um, I may not know your exact journey, but there's a few things that we have common knowledge of, or we've been exposed to, or even if it's something as simple as like listening. That's what listening to music is, right? Like, you hear a song, I hear a song, it's the same one,
Hmm.
but we're both going to perceive it differently. It's going to feel a different way to you than it does to me, but um, we can both connect on the fact that we appreciate that one piece of music, right? That's what music for me has been, the catalyst for all of that. It's just that in movies and just entertainment. It's like, hey, we both enjoy these things. You might have a completely different background than I do, but we still enjoy something similar, right? So there's connective tissue with everything. So I try my best to take that into account and not um not isolate myself so much that um, I know that I'm working on things in my own personal and professional life that are my goals and ambitions, but everybody else is doing the same thing too, right? So
Hmm.
it only takes a second to listen to somebody, and you never know when somebody might need some help. That too. I know when I needed help, I'm very much a prideful kind of person when it comes to asking for help, but when you open yourself up to just asking questions, and as audio engineer, like, that's as you're coming up, that's if you don't ask questions, ain't nobody just going to give you all the information that you want to know. Like, that's not going to happen, as much as I hate to say it. And
Right.
that's not a knock to nobody, that's just the way that it is. If you want to know something, at least ask. At least somebody will know that you asked because you were looking for that information. I can appreciate that. The people that I get to work with that are runners or engineers, like, we're always asking questions and sharing information because that's how we all grow. And that's just been my whole thing. Whatever information I've I've gotten up into this point, whatever wisdom there is, it don't really matter. I don't care if it's from doing your taxes, because I've messed that up in the past, or how to change a tire. Like, I'm happy to share what I understand of that scenario, if it means it'll help you because you've never experienced that, and vice versa, right? Um, when all this stuff, regardless of all this stuff around here, like at the end of the day, like you're just a person trying to have a good life like I am, and around that are just little touch points where we can understand each other a little bit better. You know what I mean? And then I learn from you just like you learn from me, and hopefully it's a positive exchange of information. And yeah, we just keep it moving like that. Hopefully everybody grows and gets better and makes better decisions. But I've been uh, I've been fortunate to make it this far on my journey, and I do my best not to take it for granted. So appreciate even having the opportunity to answer all these questions, which are amazing questions. I'm very, very thankful to have a voice at all.
Well, like I said, much respect for you doing this and taking the time out to do this too. And we as humans, this is how I see it. And to me, what you just explained makes sense. We make things hard. We can make things easier. You teach me things, I teach. In other words, you pass down this, I pass it down to the next person, vice versa, and
Yeah,
so forth and so on. And I mean, it's that easy. We as humans, we just got to teach each other and keep things in balance, and that's it. But we make life very hard on this planet. We make life very hard for whatever reason. We do.
absolutely, man. Humans, I don't know what it is, that I've been fascinated with that in the last, ever since becoming a parent. Really, once you have another human that you're responsible for, you start to think of a lot more things that you can affect in the long term. And that's been the biggest thing for me is up until then, even still from day to day, like I don't even really know what my motivations are for the day. But you do the best of the information that you have, and you try to make the best possible decision for whatever you're faced with next. And again, right next door, or whoever you come across, people are trying to do the same thing. That's literally all it is. So whether it's audio or whether it's you know woodwork, I don't know, like, everybody has a different set of skills, but we all have the same kind of personal motivations, and people just want to be heard and recognized, and seen and respected, and all those good things. And I'm just trying to do my little bit, my part personally. And at the same time, like I said, I do have two sons that I'm raising, and I would hope that they have the same characteristics, and treat people the same. Yeah, because when it's all gone, whenever whatever happens, right? That's all we really have, is how we treat people and how we want to be treated. That's it. So
That's right. Well, I'll make this the final round here, and this will be like my questions about gear and whatnot. And I'll just fire off some shots here. Um, Waves or plug-in alliance?
oh man, that one's tough. I'll probably go with waves just because they have such a variety, and they've been around so long. Like, the hybrid delays and reverbs and all that stuff are some of my favorites. So I'll say waves just because I use them so frequently.
Okay, okay, okay. UAD or soft tube?
Ooh, I'd have to say UAD. I like a lot of the emulations that they've done from the Neve 1070. Their 1073 and their CO1B plugins are solid. If you can't get the hardware ones, solid.
Pro Tools 10 or Pro Tools, or the current Pro Tools, I should say.
I would only say the current Pro Tools Ultimate because I need it to work in Atmos. That's the only
Okay,
reason.
okay, okay.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, last question. I hate to ask because this is probably offensive to both, but I'm gonna do it anyway. DJ Quick or Dr. Dre?
Oh man, no answer, no comment. I love
Yeah.
them. I love them both. And even still, like, you would think that I would say Dr. Dre. Let me do it like this. I will give it to Dr. Dre by a slight edge, only because me personally, he has changed my life by being a part of the Aftermath um, brand in a way that I couldn't explain. unless I go work for DJ Quick, which could happen one day, that's probably the only edge. But in terms of music, like I can't. They're two of my personally most listened to, most favorite producers that still are super hands on with the way they do things too. Like that's the other thing that's almost impossible to pick one. Like because same thing, Quick mixes his own stuff, he does his own production, and Dre has the sound and then puts his hand on everything. Like it's you know, that's damn near an impossible question to answer, but I would tip it to Dre because I have to give him all the respect for shoot allowing me, someone like myself, to even be a part of any bit of the process. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that question. I just had to be an asshole on that. I'm just but yeah, Quick is a monster. Dre is a monster. You know, I don't see one as being better. You know, but saying yeah, I agree. I agree, Paul. I just wanted I was being an asshole. I'm sorry.
That's a good question. No, that's a good question, man. That could be a debate for the ages, man, for
Right,
sure.
right,
But
definitely.
both incredible, man. Both, and to be from like that's the other thing that I look at in music that's amazing to me is just that different artists and different people that have had such an impact and influence on music that I enjoy, come from these like pockets of whatever the circumstances are, but become larger than what those circumstances are. I think is the most amazing thing. But yeah, awesome.
Well, Paul, thank you very much for your time here. Did you enjoy yourself here?
Yeah, absolutely, man. That was really good. Some really good questions that yeah, I'm happy that I was able to even offer some insight on. So thank you for having me. It's been really cool. I appreciate it.
Yeah, much respect. Let's do this in the near future here. But again, y'all play this back. I want you all to share this. Check out Paul's Instagram. We just put on there Hitmaker and all that on there, and check out all that stuff. You have any questions? Visit his social media. Ask me a question. I'll give you the link directly, and we'll go from there. Again, thanks again, Paul, and have a great rest of the evening. And again, y'all play this back and share it.
Thank you for having me. Y'all have a great. I appreciate it. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, much respect. Peace out.
Peace.